I want to welcome you all to the conversation today, where we are going to be talking about our fifth topic, which is practicing unity. How is our church standing with and advocating for people of every ethnicity? And today we have three panelists. We have Sarah Rodriguez, we have Monica McCrae, they're both in North Carolina, sorry. And we have Eric Dewald. So sorry. All right, we have Eric and he's in New York. So we're going to be listening to them again, because these conversations are for us to grow, to learn, to create unity in our body of believers. And then whatever you learn from here, it's not like one size fits all. It's what they're doing and how can you take it to your communities, to your zip codes, to your churches. Just ideas that help you, create that intentionality. And so without further ado, Monica, can you share with us your context, where you're located, and about your church?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Monica McCrae. I am from Greensboro, North Carolina, and I'm actually an assistant pastor at Christ Wesleyan Church, Greensboro. Not originally from Greensboro, but moved there just by hearing the voice of God, and He led me there. But anyway, I grew up a country girl. Listen, I'm from a more mono-ethnic denomination, I would say, born and raised Baptist, so I'm not Wesleyan, born and bred. I'm sorry. I am actually 3 years into this denomination, and it was scary at first. Listen, coming from, just being honest, and if I could be transparent, coming from an all Black church where we had Black gospel and, just being used to doing things a certain way, and then hearing the voice of God, which is always scary sometimes when He's like, go, and having to obey that. And coming into the Wesleyan denomination where I knew absolutely nothing. Honestly, guys, I had never even heard of Wesleyan before. And so it was a different experience for me to walk into what is now, I co-pastor with God, okay, and my lead pastor, but to walk in this church, this precious place to the kingdom, and see different ethnicities worshiping together. That was really scary for me, and it wasn't quite what I was used to. And so my first mind was to run away, run far away, because sometimes we're not good at embracing new. But I knew that that's where God was leading me to. And I'm so glad to this day that I obeyed His voice. Listen, it's been some challenges. But one thing I'm reminded of, even in the challenges, is God is the God of the hills and the valleys, okay? The mountaintop, He's God, and the valley low, He's still God. And so even today, as we are pushing through COVID, listen, and trying to maneuver changes, and we're still, we are multicultural, multi-ethnic, and we're still building. We haven't arrived yet. And I don't know if we'll ever arrive until we get to heaven. But one thing I celebrate is that being a part of a community of fellowship that desires to look like the kingdom of God. And so I thank God for that. I say it's a beautiful disaster, okay? I thank God for that beautiful disaster. But yeah, that's a little about me. And I just want to say that if it's okay, Wesleyan Life magazine, if your church has those magazines, there's actually an article written about my life where I grew up with a kind of cult leader pastor, and just overcoming obstacles that I had to face with, my father being a cult leader pastor, and how I, became who the woman of God, and is becoming the woman of God, hopefully, that He's called me to be. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me, guys. And thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you so much. Are you talking about this magazine?
Yes, that magazine. I'm actually in there. And it's about my life, just desiring to be a pioneer and advocating for different ministries. And yeah, a little bit about my upbringing. My father was a cult leader pastor from Philadelphia, very abusive to women and their children. And so it just kind of shares my story about how I left the church. Had no desire to ever work. Yeah, that's me. Hey, girl. I left the church, had no desire to be in the church. You know, I kind of turned to the streets, party life, but God called me. When we sing, He knows my name, He really knew my name, and He called me by name. Out of death, out of darkness, out of the trenches. Listen, I could testify where God has brought me from. But I'm glad to be here with you guys today, and thank you for allowing me to share.
Yeah, of course, Monica. Thank you so much for that. I think we can find this article also online.
Yes.
So I'm going to dig the link and send it in the chat so you can find it and you can read it. But thank you so much. Grateful to have you in the Wesleyan Church for sure. Where we're doing for sure, practicing unity and all the things we learn. And it's a journey. So thank you so much for joining us. Sarah, we're going to hear from Sarah. She's also in North Carolina. And since I'm sure that you're now used to this, she has to leave early because of babies. She has to pick them up. So we're going to hear from her. Eventually, you're not going to see her again. It's because she's busy being a mommy. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you. Buenas tardes. Hello to everyone. And my husband was with me the last time we came onto this cohort. He is the pastor of our church, and he wasn't able to be here today, but I'm here just to testify to what we're working on in our church plant. And as far as the subject is about, I'm including different ethnicities. Since we are church planters and since our church is Spanish speaking, pretty much the signs and the advertisements, everything is, for Spanish speaking, we get a lot of different cultures that come to our church. So we have people from El Salvador, Puerto Rico, Honduras, Mexico, and USA. But then also when you're planting a church, you also get a lot of youth and children in the church. So if you can imagine, almost all of those youth and children also speak English. So we have Spanish speaking sermon, Spanish praise songs, but then when we have our youth meeting and we have our kids time, it's almost all in English. So just right there, you can see we're including a lot of different, people from different backgrounds. And it's really neat to think of my husband, if he was here, what he always says is, it's not, we're not all Mexican. A lot of people think it's just all Mexican, but no, we've got, the islands for the Puerto Rican, and the Puerto Ricans have, certain privileges maybe that the people from Honduras don't. They can come and go from their country, and people from Honduras, a lot of them cannot. They haven't seen their parents for years, or people from Mexico haven't seen their parents for years. So even though everybody in my church are all Spanish speaking, we're all so very, very different. And just kind of understanding that, being a pastor, being a youth leader, being a worship leader too, just kind of understanding where people are coming from. Like one of the girls in my youth group, she's in middle school, and just, having conversations with her and talking about how she got to the United States and came in a big semi truck with a whole bunch of people in the back. I mean, it's just things that not just everybody has gone through, and you feel for them and you have compassion. But then you also say, but this person is here. They're with me. They're in my youth group. And this is a person that God has called me to minister and to love. And so it really does take the heart of Christ. It takes a lot of kindness and understanding and compassion to know where people are coming from, and to build a church and to build a ministry with all these building blocks. So we're also very multi-generational in the sense that we have a lot of young people and some older people too. And it's just been so exciting to see what God has been doing since we were able to get back in the building. We use a Methodist building, and they had it closed for more than a year. And so it's so exciting when they opened that building back up, and to see how everybody came back. And a lot of the people were the people who had been following our services on Facebook Live, but a lot of people were people who we just hadn't seen at all. And boom, the building was open and they were back. And to me, that was super, super exciting to be together again. We had Santa Cena, which is the Lord's Supper. We had Santa Cena on Sunday for the first time as a church body together. We had been doing it on Zoom, where everybody had their own elements in their own home. So we're just excited, and we're going to have a Christmas pageant this year, and we haven't had one in 3 years. And it's just so many cool things that God is doing, and we're just kind of going with what God says to do.
Amen. Thank you so much for that, Sarah. Yeah, I always think, of that difference of like, yeah, not all of us that speak Spanish are Mexicans, not all have even the same. You can be born here and it's different. You can be just coming here and it's different. And so all the nuances that come from that. But thank you so much, Sarah. Eric, share with us.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eric Dewald. I'm just outside of Albany, New York, in Niskayuna, New York. This area is regularly considered one of the most secular in the region, or in the nation. And so that has its own kind of unique set of challenges, but honestly, I'd rather be nowhere else. I came here about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. Our church, Awaken Church, was replanted about 8 years ago. And so when I came, I very much inherited the multi-ethnic community that we love and enjoy. That being said, since I've come, we've really had to work hard at unity. I think of Ephesians 4, make every effort to maintain the spirit of unity through the bond of peace.
Yes.
It's been worth every effort. I also, John 17 comes to mind when Jesus is praying in the garden before he goes to the cross. Father, may they be one, even as we are one. And this desire Jesus has for unity is just so worth every effort. So we have a sizable Filipino congregation. Since actually the last time we did this call, working on a partnership with a pastor from El Salvador. And just been so deeply grateful. I'm learning a ton. I'm learning as I go, and just deeply grateful for it. So thank you all.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I remember the first time that we're talking, and New York is such a big place. I mean, I think it's also because so many nations and way of thinking and everything is there, right? Compiled into one place. But thank you so much. And so today about practicing unity, right?
Mhm.
Your church is standing with and advocating for people of every ethnicity. So how do you see yourself and your ministry represented in this topic that we're talking about today? Because now we know your context, but how did you see yourself represented in this one, in this thing that we're talking about today? Anybody can go now.
Well, I'll go. So myself, actually in practicing unity, just part of my own day-to-day life, I host a women's Bible study group every Thursday. It's something that I actually started when COVID hit, but it was for women of all races, ages, stages, and walks of life. And so we have been just that. It's been really encouraging to me to have women from all over the United States join every Thursday. And we kind of had Zoom fatigue at one time, but we've still been going on. And so I've seen these women grow. And I love it because we're able, when we come to our meeting, we're able to learn from each other, right? There's different cultures, different ethnicities there, and we're able to just pour from our own point of view. And it's kind of like a Holy Spirit, help me. It's kind of like a very intimate setting, right? We don't always get those when we're in church services and stuff like that, but here's an intimate setting where women can just come together. And when I heard somebody say they were multi-generational. This is a very multi-generational group of women. And so that's more so on my personal life, in personal ministry, but in our church, oh my goodness, just being able to advocate for each group. I'm telling you, we have, just to name some of the different ethnicities that we have in our church, in just to give an example. So we have Cambodian, white, Black, Asian, Hispanic, Miss Young, who's from Korea. And one issue we had at one time that we had to like kind of resolve was worship. You know, how do you bring all these different groups of people together for worship? That was really one thing that I struggled with. As I told you guys, among many, when God placed me here, because I was used to a certain type of worship. But I'm telling you, when we step out the way and we really share our heart for God and we allow God to bring us together, right? One kingdom, one body. And we all share the spirit of God. He has a way of truly working things out. And so we do now is an all-inclusive worship at our church where we may sing a gospel song. We may sing a contemporary. Listen, you would not believe it, but when we break out in a hymn, I'm in worship crying. I love hymns. And so we found a way to include everybody. And it's very special when you do that, when you're not busy arguing about, hey, I want it this way, or hey, I want it this way because this is what I'm used to. But you set yourself aside and you open yourself up for God's way. And so that's been a little bit of how my church has come together to, just bring our different cultures together and unify us. And I think it's been just really great. It's been working. Like I said, in it all unity, it's always going to be challenges. It's always going to be opposition, but glory be to God, he's helped us overcome them, and we're still pushing.
Amen. Thank you so much. So, we can have unity as a corporate body, like all of us, but then be intentional, like having the small groups or community groups, intentional with just women of different ages, because I can learn from younger or older. I cannot think that I have arrived because I have a certain age, or whatever. And so that's, I think, where more intentionality comes in. Like, yes, you are welcome here. We all want to learn from you. And then when you see yourself in the corporate body, oh, this is where I fit. And this is what's good. And it helps you to invite other people where they can actually fit. There is always a room in our table for everybody. So thank you for that. Yeah. Eric or Sarah? Go, Eric.
Sure, I'll go. So I like to think of that question or the prompt in two parts: standing with and advocating for, because they are related, but they are distinct. You have to stand with first before you advocate for. And so I've just been thinking about specifically Philippians 2, in our relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus. And really seeking to embody the humility of Jesus. Jesus traded the glory of heaven to dwell among us. I mean, I need to be humble in all of my relationships with other people. So I think the powerful thing in that is when we honor other people above ourselves, we're in a place then where we have to listen first. And so we need to speak less. And so I just think that's a powerful way to just seek to understand and learn from one another. I've been repeatedly put over the past couple years where I'm just learning and I'm just absorbing and I'm seeking to stand with as best as I can. I have a tendency to rush through standing with to get to advocating for, but I can't do that well if I haven't stood with effectively. So I think that's been huge. One very practical outworking of this, 2 weeks prior to me coming to the church, our entire Filipino community had left over a misunderstanding about membership. And so it was devastating for our church. And it was not easy to work through that. I mean, it was many, 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 many hours of just building relationships, seeking the Lord together, humbling ourselves, being completely reliant on God's grace. And by the grace of God, it was completely restored. But that's all God's work in and through. And just, it took longer than I wanted it to, it was a longer process than, maybe I would have desired, but I think we're stronger on the other side as a result. I think that the advocating for comes very naturally out of standing with, just because the love of Christ compels us to advocate to those, for those whom we love and who we know. And so it was just like a really cool thing that God did. We now have a Filipino gentleman in church leadership. From what I'm understanding from the community, he is the only Filipino in church leadership in our region. And so that's just something very cool that God did. I don't even know that was on my radar, but that is just something the Lord, through his grace, has accomplished. And so, yeah, unity is really hard. It takes a lot of time. I feel like I get a new lesson on it every day, but it's totally worth it.
Yeah, something that I'm sure that you have learned is like, especially multi-ethnic ministries, you can't rush it because people let you in so slowly, either for trust issues, either because they were hurt, either because, I don't know. I mean, I already have my friends. I mean, not to make a new friend. I don't know. It just is so very many different ways. But what you were saying about advocating for, standing with and advocating for, it brings me to the learning tool that we share for today. And number one, it says, be a good listener. To be able to speak on behalf of others, you need to be able to know what they will say. But just beware, this is where we face the ever-present danger of assuming. So sometimes when we listen and somebody's talking, you're like, oh yeah, they did this. And then you're like, ding, ding, ding. You're starting to connect some dots. And yeah, that's good that you're connecting, but sometimes you're in your head connecting more than you're actually actively listening. So just paying attention. Oh my goodness, I'm doing something. And so come back to the person and listen to those words that they're saying. And then number two, create relationship. If we wish to speak on behalf of, or even better, alongside others, then we need to build friendships and give them our time. That's like what Eric was saying. You can rush it because, they're going to miss so much. Whenever we are trying to watch a movie and we fast forward so fast, you're missing special things that are happening. You only see the actions, but you don't hear things. So we need to be so intentional about that. Sarah, you want to share something with us?
Yeah, I think we're just in kind of a very unique context here. Just being church planters and, not having our own building, it just causes for a lot of opportunities to see unity, not only within our own church, but just our community. And so kind of like the context I'm coming from here is we have a campus in Durham, North Carolina, and we also have a campus in Mebane, North Carolina. And the campus in Mebane, it doesn't have a lot of families yet because it's just brand new, but that building, an older church uses it, a Black church uses it, and we use it. So all three of us use that church, okay? And one has one setup, one has another setup, and we have our own setup. And then there's this one lady who runs the sound who comes to all three services, and she's white. And it's so funny to see how she gets along with all three of the churches. And you kind of, when we first met her, we had to kind of figure out her personality. And now I think she just really loves us. She brought us a pastor appreciation gift and everything. So, but it's just been really interesting, working and trying to just show the love of Christ in every aspect, because it's not always about, oh, how did the production go or how did the song sound? It's about the people you're rubbing shoulders with in this common goal. Am I showing them kindness along the way?
Yeah.
And then we have our other campus in Durham, and that's where I was talking about how everybody came back, and it was so exciting after COVID because we were just kind of surviving in Mebane during COVID because that was the only building that would open for us. And so being back in Durham, it's just, the kind of the context we come from there is it's also a building that the food hub uses. And the lady who runs the food hub is an ordained Lutheran minister. And, a lot of times she's always trying to get us involved in the things that she's doing. And sometimes we have to be like, yes, we can do that, or no, we can't do that. And just kind of have to tell her, what you've got in mind, it calls for a lot of volunteers and people like during work hours. And a lot of the people in our congregation, they work a lot, they're always at work, and it's not like we can get that many volunteers. But just trying to be in this community that we're living in and trying to plant Hispanic ministry at the same time has been a real learning curve for us. And we just have to be real careful just to always be kind, be loving, and just and know what to say yes to and know what to say no to.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Partnering with others is so important that are different from you. It speaks a lot. It says a lot about us as Christians, as pastors, as leaders. Because sometimes I think people think, oh, I need to be a Wesleyan to talk to you. I need to be a woman to talk to you. I need to be a man to talk to you. It's like, no, we can work together. We have our differences and everything, but we can work together just showing the love of Christ. So yeah, that's something that, thank you so much for sharing. So if a church, how can a church include more standing with and advocating for people of every ethnicity? I don't know how you guys do this in your church. If you can give us examples, how do you do this? Eric, you can go first.
I think for me, it just starts personally. I go back to the Tony Evans quote that's on the handout. If we won't allow God to change our own individual hearts, how can we change? How can He change the nation? Each of us must develop a heart that cares for our fellow man, created in the image of God. So it starts personally. I've had a lot of time of repentance and things I need to learn, things I needed to unlearn, and just really just seek the Lord personally. And then as a natural outgrowth of that, those whom I disciple, how does that affect them? And then ultimately, how does that affect our church partnerships? And how does that affect who we partner with for the purpose of the gospel? So it's been kind of neat to watch that sequence. I think if I were to jump ahead to discipleship, trying to train others before it was formed in me, that wouldn't be good. If I was trying to jump ahead to partnerships, I would probably be inauthentic in the way that we were expressing this. And then I think just, it sounds simple, but it's so huge, like seeking the Lord and being at a place where, we're willing to be changed. And I think, one other just little piece of that is gaining a scriptural anchor. So I continually return to these texts, Ephesians 4 and John 17, where there is this call for unity. And I think so often at least I haven't appreciated the depth, how much Jesus really cares about unity. And so if my Lord cares about unity, I can't call him my Lord and not care about unity. And that means that I need to change and I need to align with him if I'm going to take that seriously. So I think that's been one of the biggest shifts in my own heart, and then how that impacts relationships with other people.
Yeah, that's great. Anybody wants to share?
Yeah, I'll share. Eric, you brought up some great points, especially, even when we look at the life of Jesus, he was all about unity. But one thing I really admire is that he like always went to the least likely people, that we would think that he would conversate with, right? And so sometimes we get so comfortable, right? It's easy for me to go up and I just, if I could keep it real, it's easy for me to go up to a Black person and have a conversation. But in our churches, what we do, and what I try to do, especially as being a leader in the Lord's church, is be intentional about making sure everybody is included. And when other people see me being intentional, then they'll do it as well. And so, I think, one thing we have to be intentional about, right? How do I do that? What's the process of doing that? Loving on people that you may have not normally loved on, speaking to people. We've started this Hope Center at our church, and, a big part of our congregation now is a homeless population. And I know that sounds crazy, but, each Sunday we see new homeless people coming in, and it's so easy just to look past those people and go to somebody else that you're comfortable with loving on and hugging. And as leaders, our congregations and those who look up to us need to see us. I know they need to see us, and that kind of sounds weird that I'm saying it now, but I agree what Eric says, like it begins with you. And so being intentional with that and letting it be from the heart, right? Because that's what Jesus was. What he did was from his heart. And so, I think it should be our desire to model what Jesus did, for our personal lives and for our church. I just go back so many times in my head about how Jesus went up to the Samaritan woman, a woman that, he shouldn't even have fellowship with. And I think that's such a beautiful story, and the change and the effect that it took on her life. And so I believe if we model that, we never know how that will affect those who are around us or those who we love on. I hope that kind of makes sense, but yeah, that's mine.
No, yeah, that makes sense. Now that you said that, I remember one of the stories from another pastor that was in the first time that we shared this cohort. And no, sorry, that's a lie. I saw it in a devotional. And so somebody was saying that he is a pastor in a college, and he's asking for people to come from the college to serve in the community that we're going. But I think what the thing is that they were going to places where women were being slaved into, like do stuff that they shouldn't be doing, right? And so one student came and, oh yeah, I want to be part of this. I know it's going to be hard, but whatever. And so they were in the street trying to talk to these women. And the teacher said, okay, just pay attention to what I do so you learn. And then next time I will give you the opportunity. So he's looking to see what the pastor does, the teacher is doing. And then the next time he's like, oh yeah, here comes that woman. Do you think, I don't know if she said a hooker, he said something. And the teacher said, no, she's a woman. So just to see, yes, she is a person that we need to disciple to, that we need to reach her. But once you see her as something else, it immediately puts her on a category. Once you see her as a woman or the person that needs Jesus, immediately puts her back. It feels like it puts her back in my lane rather than put her someplace else. And I think sometimes taking people from the them to the us, because we're all created by God, right? And so we as humans need each other. We need to help each other. This is the unity. Now, yes, I was born in Venezuela. You were born in the United States. Immediately, right? We are of them, but we are united because God made us in his image, and so just sometimes, okay, what do I have in common with this? Because sometimes it's hard for our communities to see that. It was hard in the Bible, it reminds me of Zacchaeus, like, why are you talking to him? And still God had so much grace on him, and so, yeah, just practicing unity is standing with, because it has a lot to do with relationships. It has a lot of talking. I don't know how am I going to stand in with you if I don't know you, right? But I still can do that, regardless of ethnicity sometimes too, so just how we're doing that. And I don't know if our participants have questions or comments on this. For our panelists right now, we have Eric and Monica. Sarah had to go get her kids, but she said she will connect with us through the phone. But yeah, I don't know if you have any questions or any comments to the panelists. I will give you a few minutes just to unmute and just ask them.
I had to comment about that. Very appreciate this is coming, especially with a different language. I'm pastor in New Jersey, but I say before too that when we the same language in different culture and the different food when they prepare and everything, but it's very, especially now I learn for everything we need to be patient, keeping together, patient. We don't have to. I know we pray because God working with this, but it's just only patience, because as in the beginning, sometimes when I start to the pastor, I'm from Peru, and I took something different for the Central America. And one day I did something, the Central America, they feeling a little not upset, but difficult for they understand me what I speak. And I say, oh God, I have to change my inside. Please help me first. I can change for understand to them. And that will help me for years. Now it's more easy um, to be to be talk to them to the when I preach, when I visit to them in the home. So sometimes when I go to hospitals when they sick, but I learn a lot that one by patience. A lot of patience. Thank you.
Yes, excellent. Thank you so much. In Spanish, I don't know how much in English, you have Canadians and people from England and everything. And of course, the whole United States, right? You can have little words that you say and everything. But I think in Spanish, of course, I was born in Venezuela. I can say one word to, our sister Aide, who just spoke, and she will be like, what did you just say? So just having the mentality of going to like a base Spanish, sometimes it's even harder because I need to make sure that I'm not only communicating well, I'm communicating well across all Hispanics so they can hear me. That's good. The thing is that what sometimes it makes it bad is like, if I have a word, all my Venezuelans will get it and it has like an essence, but it's going to be lost once I put it lower on a lower base. I think sometimes it happens with the Bible too, when there are no words to say it, but they have to have to grasp, what that means, because there is no actual translation. So thank you for that. Sometimes, patience is very much needed when we're dealing with these things, but thank you so much. Anybody else has a question or a comment, or even the panelists, if you have something to say?
I just love that theme of patience. Going back to Ephesians 4 again, bear with one another in love. We make mistakes. We say things we ought not say. We say things maybe in the wrong way, but that concept of bearing with one another, walking with one another, and also the necessity of forgiveness to forgive. Christ forgave you. If that's our knee-jerk reaction, if we're quick to forgive, that's going to foster unity as well. So I just love that theme of patience. I know other people need patience with me, and I hope I can embody that as well. So thank you.
Amen. So this topic of advocating or advocating with or standing with people, sometimes it's hard because why are you standing with them? Why are you advocating for them? You can sometimes, I think the cynical part of us can go in. And so how do you deal when that comes? How do you help your church and your community to move from that to, I understand, the love of Christ, but do you have any examples of how you moved from being, from having people in your church backing up, like, I don't want to do that, giving you a little bit of stress because I didn't want to do that with you? And how did you overcome it? I don't know if that makes sense what I'm asking. Monica, you can go.
Yeah, I'll go. So I was just recollecting, like, on a time not too far ago, where there was a lot happening in my culture, in my community here in the United States. There was a lot of gun violence and brutalities and things going on. And, it was the rise of the Black Lives Matter community and stuff like that. And so going to a multicultural, multi-ethnic church and actually being a leader there, it was very, very tough because you had people who were, for the movement and, people who agreed what was happening was horrible, and then you had people who did not agree, and that's okay. I respect everyone in their own opinion. And so it caused a big division, not only in my church, but people I know around me, other churches and other situations. And let me tell you, it was one of the hardest things to get through, because also we were going through COVID, and it was just things on top of things just piling up. And so you said it, Josmar, it was to seek God first. Easy answer. But then, what do you do next? Because faith without works is dead, right? And so I definitely had the faith and believed that God would fix it, but I had to do my part. And we talked about it earlier. One is having patience with people, because sometimes we don't understand other cultures, other ethnicities, and we don't understand the importance of things that is important to them. So yeah, having that understanding plays a big part of that, but also respecting other people in their opinions. Either way, we can't say whether someone is right or wrong in their opinion. We know how we feel, but I ultimately leave it up to God. I try not to let, and what I try to share with other people is not to let situations that are not eternal tear us apart. And I hope that kind of makes sense. So they mean a lot to us, and I'm not dismissing that. Like I said, I respect people and their opinions. I respect cultures, but if it's not an eternal issue, my prayer as kingdom people is that we wouldn't let those issues tear us apart. So I hope that helps. At least explain, how we can continue to stand with people and love on them when they're going through. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead, Eric.
I just love that idea, Monica, of allowing our opinions to kind of not be the main thing, keep the main thing. The main thing, I think you said, if it's not an eternal issue, if it's not something pertaining to salvation, allowing it to be wayside. It's just a way for us to, again, honor other people above ourselves. And so I just think that is so huge. I think in our context, I didn't have as much pushback as far as whether or not to advocate. I think everybody was in agreement we need to advocate. But I find often when the rubber meets the road, when it comes to listening, listening is hard and it's uncomfortable. And it means that I'm going to hear truth about myself that I don't want to hear, and it's going to cut me a little bit, and then it's going to bring me to a place where I need to change. And so I think sometimes maybe the intention is right, maybe the intention is in the right place, but when it comes to actually doing the hard work of listening, that's where in our context there's been a little pushback.
This brings me to the fourth. Oh, go ahead, Michael.
I don't know if this would help, but several years ago, before we had a Hispanic congregation, I remember I went to the church office. I'm not the senior pastor, by the way, but he was in the office and he was speaking to a group of Hispanic folks who were wanting to be part of our church. And so I went in, I introduced me, I met them. And after I left that meeting with them, for about 2 or 3 minutes, the temptation came to my mind. What if these Hispanics come and they take over our church? Can you imagine? Where are the Black people going to be? No, that was a temptation. And I wrestled with that temptation. And I then had to rebuke the temptation. I rebuked the temptation by saying, look here, this is God's church. He does what he wants to do with it. And if that's the way it turns out, then that's the way God wants. And I'm working with that. Several years later, we got this Hispanic pastor came. He is a very likable person, he and his family. And I kind of intentionally, or kind of naturally, but intentionally connected with him, became friends, got involved with the congregation that came to him. And so I understood, as we talk about, learning from each other, listening, that's what I did. I learned, I listened, I understood a lot to a great extent. And while I didn't speak Spanish, there was a kind of hard connection with the rest of the folks who attended. So that even with our senior pastor and this other pastor, I became mediator when issues came up, because I could advocate in right there and then and explain and help. I could also speak to this Hispanic pastor. He's from El Salvador. And because I developed a friendship with him, I could say some hard things to him because I had already gotten some, what do you call it, relational capital, if you will. So I could say some things to him, and we talk to each other and make jokes that other people with each other that other people could have found offensive. You're saying that to him, why you're not sensitive? But we knew from you have the heart connection and the, you know to each other. Then that, so I got involved with him, his family, and so forth, and attended the services. And we had good time because even though I don't speak Spanish well, I learned it in high school. I mean, I can say a couple words. I mean, they would joke at me that when I did translation, some of the words weren't really too right. But, there was a love relationship that developed in all of this. And that helped because I'm drawn to this thing about unity in the body of Christ. I want to see it in operation. And so I advocate on either side. So when a senior pastor has an issue with that, then I can translate, if you will, and help with the understanding. So anyway, that's my comment. Hope not too long.
It's good, Michael. Thank you so much for sharing. But yeah, so that brings me to our fourth topic here on the learning tool. It says prayer, grace, trust, repeat. Prayer, grace, trust, repeat. And it's true. As soon as people start to feel threatened, they get defensive, and we end up in a cycle of bitterness. And doesn't the devil want us to have bitterness in our hearts, like all the time? It is amazing when something the devil says and it sticks in you, how sometimes hard it is for us to shake it off. A lot of prayer, a lot of confession. Why am I feeling this? What's happening? Because the enemy doesn't want unity. He wants disunity. So taking small steps or approaches when making changes is important. Even if it seems like it's a long, hard struggle, get people around you who will pray and remind you of grace. In all things, Christ will be our greatest advocate. So we need to pray when those thoughts come. We need to have people around us that know our struggle, kind of like what Michael was saying. How can you say that to them? Because our relationship, the importance of relationships that are deep, because sometimes like, oh yeah, I have shared with you here, but do I really know your struggles? No, right? Because I haven't spent the time with each of you. So what's going to take me is the phone call, talking to you, scheduling another appointment and scheduling more, to the point where you're saying, hey, Josmar, have you thought about this? Or hey, Josmar, this, and to the point where I can actually receive it or even ask, like, hey, what do you think about that? But that is where trust comes because of the relationship that we have. And sometimes we don't want to create a relationship because we don't want people to come in to say the hard things to us. We just want the beautiful, flowery, things. So yes, prayer, grace, trust, repeat. Very important, not just in our relationships, but in our ministry, because it's so much needed, because the enemy wants just disunity. But forgot your name for a second, Eric and Monica. So we have, our participants here, and how, if they wanted to do more advocating, or if they wanted to do more standing with people, what are some steps that they should take in their churches? What are some practical insights that you can give them in order for them to do this?
Well, one thing you guys mentioned that was very important is building relationships. I don't know if I can stress the importance of that. When you build relationships with people, and I know it's been said, but you get to know them. You earn their trust, and so when you start building relationships, you begin to find out about them, and you're able to stand with them. You find out what's more important to them, what means the most to them, and you understand why, right? You begin to get their reasoning why they do what they do, and so you're able to stand with them in that. I didn't understand a lot about a lot of different cultures, and I'm taught very well by this special lady in my church. Her name is Miss Young, and I mentioned her earlier. She's Korean, but I'm able, like, I have a relationship with her, and so I'm able to go to her and ask her like certain things. Every Tuesday she comes to our church faithfully from 12 to 1. She prays for a whole hour. In certain things that she do that's very culture wise, and so I'm able to, when you build relationships and you form those friendships or whatever you want to call it, is it makes it easier to understand why you should stand with them people. And so again, I would definitely just advise that you build relationships so you can understand people and have love for them. Life, we're born different, like, and that immediately separates us. That difference that we're born into. I don't even care if it's in your own culture, right? Sometimes you can be, African American culture, but your household are different. And so, we different naturally by life, we're disunified. So finding that way to come back together. I know Paul said, I believe it was in Romans 12, maybe, if it all live peaceably together, find some common peace. And as people of God, another way of just unifying ourselves is just to humble ourselves, and we don't always have to be right. It doesn't always have to be our way, but really taking the time, which comes in building relationships, just to understand other people.
Mhm. Thank you so much, Eric.
Yes, I think we've covered a lot of great ground. I mean, seeking the Lord, listening, building relationships. Maybe only couple things I would add. For me, I've needed like a mentor throughout this, because I don't have all the answers. So I know, especially if we've navigated all of kind of the chaos of the last 18 months, I've needed other people speaking into my life, to help coach me on these things, call me out on certain things, like whatever is needed. If I'm going to lead well through these things, I need a mentor. And then the only other thing I would say is I think a really powerful way to advocate for someone is to empower them and equip them and really, unleash them, so to speak. One of the most powerful things that happened throughout the pandemic, there was a Filipino gentleman, grew up in the Philippines. He shared with me a disciple making resource that he had gotten from a church in the Philippines, and we actually then worked together in developing this resource and kind of making it specifically tailored for our church. But that wouldn't have happened like if he wasn't in a place where he was essentially leading our discipleship initiative that ended up blessing dozens of people. So I don't know. What I loved about that was it was his idea, not my idea, and it was a better idea than I could have ever come up with. And so there's just something beautiful about just not needing all of the good ideas coming from us and just seeing who the Lord has placed in our midst, empowering them, and just maybe the last thing I would say is just let the Lord lead the outcome. If I come in with some preconceived idea of what I think this should look like, it's probably best that I lay that down and let the Lord take the lead.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, we have a lot of intentionality, right? And humility for sure, because finding a mentor, it tells you right there what you said, I don't have all the answers, which some people, for them, they will think they do. I'm the pastor or whatever. So yeah, thank you for that. But if you are, in your churches, in your group, in your community, this learning tool that we created, that we share, it says, how do I develop in, or how I develop my advocacy? And so it has create an approach and go to the word. Definitely going to the word is very important. Understanding what's in your church, what's in your community, praying that God reveals that to you. God is going to reveal it to you, to your leadership team. Maybe from right now, he's already doing it, the things that we have to pray about. But create an approach, because like I was saying at the beginning, they are doing this in their zip codes, in their communities, and it's not a one size fits all. What from what they share can you put in your where you are located, for what God put you in? It doesn't have to be that you are exactly the leader. Monica said that she's not the lead pastor, she's an assistant pastor, and so it's not necessarily that you have to be at the top, but you still can influence wherever you are. We all have influence where we are, and so utilizing that for advocating for standing with other people. So thank you so much for sharing about your ministry and how it has changed from the last time that you were here. Definitely we can see God move in showing us things that we had no idea that were happening or that were going to happen, but how his grace has embraced us. So thank you so much. I hope that all of you that were in the call enjoy the conversation. I don't know if you have any more questions before we end it, or any more comments. Go ahead.
Yeah. Just to say that sometimes the connection with people is helped. I reference to people all the time about that Exodus story, how God had shown so much kindness to people. And when he actually finally did give them commandments and rules to follow, was after he had done all of these things for them. And for me, that is a helpful one to use, that we can actually reach out to people sacrificially, those we want to listen to, so that they know that we do care about them and their issues. And then, we can also affirm the good qualities. I think there's a scripture that speaks to that. Affirm the good qualities we see. I think this Paul speaking to Timothy. Affirm the good qualities we see in them. Because even with young folks, people in our church, I make it an intentional effort when I see things about them positive. Things about young couples I go to them and I see this happening. And I think it's a wonderful thing. And I encourage them in that light. And so they know that I have good intentions toward them. Mm-hmm. So that at some point, if I do have to say something they may find it difficult, they know that I do care. I have their interest at heart. Mm-hmm. And so I thought I'd just throw that out here if it is any help.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, it doesn't, we're trying to be, we're trying to create unity in the whole kingdom first, so that, multi-ethnic, multi-economic, multi-generational, men, women, I always say lay and clergy, sorry. And so from everywhere to everywhere, we're trying to create unity among everybody,
Yeah. My Spanish is bad, isn't so good either.
It's so good. No, it's all good. I think, coming from an angle where I speak Spanish, I'm thankful when somebody's trying to speak my language. And I'm pretty sure it's the same for when I am trying to speak the English to somebody, because, I like, for example, my husband, he's American. My mom doesn't speak very well English, but she's trying to speak English for him, and he tries to speak Spanish for him. So it's an effort, and you can tell that somebody cares just because they're trying. So I think it's just the intentionality that we put. Yes, sometimes it's, oh my goodness, I said something wrong. Sorry, just help me, teach me. So it's just it's like what we having here in the whole COVID time. We're in this together. The same thing in ministry. We're in this together, and we have one goal. But yes, thank you so much all for being here. Thank you, Veda, for the comment that you said. She said, thanks so much for this conversation, really many takeaways. So that's the idea of this conversation, is that you can talk to the panelists and then you can hear from their leadership and how you can see how God has been working on them. So sorry, I really appreciate you. Thank you for all that you share. And we will see you next week. But we will be talking about Public Square. How is our church engaging kingdom action to increase ethnic and racial equality in our community? So have a nice day. God bless you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.